I had a client years ago. Gosh, I'm trying to remember what podcast I had at the time. But anyway, um, she wanted to talk to angels and wanted to talk to angels. So we were connecting over, how does she get more communication with the angels? And we'd work on it, work on it. And she would still struggle and struggle. And finally, one day I'm just sitting there looking at it going, if she can't talk to the angels, who can she talk to? And all the fairies show up. Like, oh, okay. And so I said to her, I said, do you feel like you connect with the fairies? And she goes, oh, I love the fairies. Mm-hmm. She goes, I said, do you have a lot of plants in your house? And she goes, yeah, I fill my house with plants. And in fact, she was having a hard time sleeping. And I found out she had a bunch of plants in her bedroom. Oh. And the fairies were in there all night. And so that's why she wasn't able to sleep so well. So she made an agreement with them because she still wanted the plants in there. So she had a conversation with them saying, I'm trying to sleep. Mm-hmm. So I need you not to be in there during those hours. But anyways, after that, then she found out she was connected to what? The dragons. And she was actually a dragon keeper from the fairy realm. And her life got real interesting after we figured out why it wasn't the angels she was connecting with, because they kept going, oh, you need to be over here. Yeah. But because we had an agenda, we didn't let that go for a while. It took a couple of times before we finally figured out, maybe we should just ask what you're supposed to connect to. Mm-hmm. And that's when it all started to come through. So anyways, that was a fun one.
That's very cool. Now I'm going to ask something because you made an opening here about the dragons and then somebody being a fairy and dragon. So what connection, if any, are you finding with dragons and fairies?
I mean, we've got an infinite amount of universes, multiverses, all the things. So it can be any connection you want it to be. But there is a realm that holds the fairy, wizard, magic, dragons, unicorns. Okay. They're all in one. It's like a very magical, and for our experience, it would be very magical to go there. But that's where there's a collective. But there is also an individual dragon realm where there's floating islands and waterfalls, and it's so beautiful. Whenever my dragon takes me there, it's like you just want to hang out.
Oh, that sounds just like the Avatar, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, when I saw Avatar, I'm like, that's what the dragon realm looks like. So, yeah, very, very similar to what they did with Avatar. And it makes you wonder how many people see these things. And I love it when an artist gets the information, because then they can make it all come to life, for everybody. But before Avatar ever came out, I was seeing the dragon realm with the floating islands and the waterfalls and it was neat to see this big island floating, and then the water would come down to this more planety, the one major island or planet, and there wouldn't be that many of them. They'd be scattered. And then there was this canyon where the dragons, there was a waterfall that go down this canyon, and they'd live in the caves in the canyon, and there was thousands of them in there. That's my vision of the dragon realm. But then they can also take you to that fairy realm that has all the mystical, magical creatures. Okay. So you've got the sprites, the fairies, the elves, the gnomes, and so on.
I was going to ask about the gnomes too a while ago when you're talking about the gardens, because they're the ones, they work in the woods and things like that too, right? So what can you tell about them? I mean, this is really cool. I love. I'm just going to talk all the nature spirits.
Do you want my gnome story?
Yes.
Okay. I love my life, by the way. These things are so fun when they happen. So again, these are kind of older stories, but there was a friend of mine. Gosh, this is how old this was. My son just turned 18 in October. I was pregnant with him when this story came. So anyways, this friend calls me and she says, something's in my house. She goes, I have an evil elf in my house. And she goes, even my husband wants me at this point to call you because now he's seen it. Okay. And he's like, he was a non-believer. And this is what she told me. She goes, yeah, he was upstairs in the theater room, and he heard one of the kids run downstairs, and their kids were still little. And he was trying to figure out why were they up. So he got up and went downstairs and nobody was downstairs. So he went back upstairs and they were all sleeping. So that freaked him out. So he went in their bedroom, woke her up and said, call your weird friend and ask her to tune into what's in this house. So she did. And I tell you what, I wish they would make a Disney movie out of this one, because what was happening is, so they had relocated because he was an anesthesiologist, and they bought this house out in the woods and had a little property, and it had a little creek that ran by it, just gorgeous house.
Mhm.
And so what happened is they cut down this gnome's tree.
Oh,
Yeah. But he would have to run through their house and then go under the house to get to where his
Oh.
tree was. And so he was always running through the house. Well, he was annoyed by that, so he was making mischief for them. And like, she was really experiencing the mischief because she was I think at that time she was a stay-home mom with the kids. So she was home all the time, and like, she's feeling something touch her. She's like physical things were happening. And so she was getting a little freaked out. Anyways, it was because she was calling it the evil elf. It didn't like that, obviously, because that's not what it was, for one.
No.
So the first thing it does, it says, quit calling me the evil elf. This is the message I'm getting. I'm a gnome and you built your house over mine. and she goes, well, we're not the ones that built it. And so as we got into it, basically, and the weird part about it was, I said, okay, and I had never been in her house. I said, he's saying that you go into the entry, into the doorway, and there's a hall. And she goes, yeah. And I said, okay, I want you to go stand where he's saying, by the door. And she goes, okay, I'm by the door. And I said, now walk forward. And she's walking forward, and he says, now, in my head. And I said, now. And she stops. I said, that's where his tree was. And she just went, and she's like, oh. She goes, this is so weird. Okay. And anyways, so then now that he had a voice, he was like, I love your kids. I love to watch them because they're all little, and he goes, but you guys built, your home was built over top of my home and I don't have anywhere to live. And so I said, well, can we find you a new tree? And he said, I would love that. So she took her kids to the craft store and they went and got all the little fairy things, the little doors and windows and stuff.
Right.
And he said he wanted to have a view of the backyard so he could watch the kids play, but he would love to be by the water. And they went and found him a tree, and they gave him a driveway and a little garage. And it was so cute. And she took pictures of it and sent it to me. And anyways, so he was all excited that they were going to help him and that they were going to do it together with him. And so they do that. And then, I don't know, a few weeks went by, a month or so, and I contacted her. I said, how's it going over there? And she goes, not a peep since we found him his new place. And the kids go over and talk to the tree, and and they play in the yard, and he can see the water, he can see the backyard. So he was happy, and everything settled down in the house. So respect the gnome's home. But yeah, they take care of the forest, and they love our trees, and then they love us too, of